Sure, here's a long, emotional, and engaging story based on the title. 17 soldiers laughed at the single dad veteran at boot camp, until the female commander saw his tattoo, written in a cinematic storytelling tone perfect for a 40-minute YouTube video narration. The camera fades in on a misty morning at Fort Reed's military base. The sound of boots hitting the ground echoes through the cold air as new recruits line up. A young narrator's voice breaks the silence. You never know who's standing next to you, until you see the scars they carry. Among the 18 recruits was a man who didn't quite fit in, his uniform slightly older, his face rougher, and his eyes deeper than the rest. His name was Jack Turner, a 38-year-old single father and retired Army veteran, returning to service after years of civilian life. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not at his age. Not after everything he'd been through. But when life pushed him against the wall, he did what soldiers do best, he stood back up. As he stood quietly in line, the younger recruits began whispering, snickering under their breath. "Look at Grandpa over there," one said. "Dude, is he lost? This isn't a dad's fitness camp." Another joked. The laughter spread like wildfire. 17 of them, fresh, loud, and proud, mocked the man who had seen more in life than they could ever imagine. Jack said nothing. He just stared straight ahead, gripping the dog tags around his neck, tags that once belonged to his fallen brothers. The commander for this batch was Captain Elena Brooks, a no-nonsense woman known for her discipline and fairness. She walked in with authority, and silence instantly fell. Her eyes scanned the recruits, and paused for a second on Jack. There was something in his stance that didn't belong to a rookie. The way he held himself, the way he looked through people, not at them. Training began, and it was brutal. The young recruits sprinted ahead, showing off their speed, shouting, and laughing. Jack stayed behind, steady but slow. Every movement reminded him of the knee injury from his last deployment, an explosion that nearly took his leg. During breaks, while others chatted, Jack sat alone, looking at a worn-out photo, his daughter, Lily, smiling in her school uniform. She was the reason he was here. The military offered him stability, a second chance to rebuild what life had broken. After his wife passed from cancer, Jack had promised Lily he'd never give up. Days passed, and the mockery continued. When Jack struggled during obstacle drills, the recruits called him Old Man River. When he fell during the mud crawl, they laughed again. But Jack always stood back up, quietly, steadily, never once answering back. Then came the endurance march, 20 miles under the scorching sun with full gear. The young men started strong, joking and shouting chants. Jack walked behind, his pace calm and measured. 10 miles in, a few recruits began to slow. By 15 miles, their laughter faded into groans. But Jack, he kept moving, sweat pouring, breathing heavy, but eyes unshaken. By the time they reached the finish line, he wasn't last. He wasn't even tired. The ones who mocked him were gasping for air, kneeling on the ground, stunned. That evening, during uniform inspection, Captain Brooks called out, "Turner, step forward." Jack obeyed, standing tall. As he adjusted his sleeve, the edge of a tattoo peeked from under his shirt, a small, faded emblem. The commander's eyes froze. She took a step closer. "Recruit Turner, that tattoo, where did you get that?" she asked softly. Jack looked down. "Ma'am, that's from the 19th Recon Battalion, Operation Iron Shield, 2010. The room went silent. One of the younger soldiers whispered, "Wait, that's the Iron Shield." "The mission from Afghanistan." Captain Brooks's voice trembled slightly as she said, "I was a lieutenant there, we lost a whole team on that ridge. Only one man made it out carrying 2 wounded soldiers on his back." She looked at him, realization dawning. "That was you." Jack nodded quietly. Every soldier in the room stood frozen. The same man they had mocked for being too old, had once saved lives in the same uniform they now wore. The silence was heavy, filled with shame, respect, and awe. Brooks turned to the others. "You boys laughed at him. But this man right here is the reason soldiers like you get to wear that uniform safely. He's not just a veteran, he's a hero." No one spoke for a long moment. Then one by one, the recruits approached Jack. The first one, trembling, said, "Sir, I'm sorry." The others followed, their arrogance stripped away. From that day on, the camp changed. Jack became the quiet mentor. When someone struggled with drills, he helped them. When morale dropped, he motivated them. Slowly, the laughter turned into respect. The boys began calling him Pops, but this time, it was out of admiration. During the final week, the recruits had to perform a night rescue simulation, an intense test of teamwork. When one soldier panicked and froze mid-course, Jack guided him through the dark, his voice calm and firm. The mission succeeded because of him. At graduation day, Captain Brooks handed Jack his certificate. But instead of just a handshake, she saluted him, a full, sharp, respectful salute. The entire platoon followed. Tears welled in Jack's eyes. He hadn't come here for glory, only for a paycheck and a purpose. But what he found was far greater, respect reborn. As he packed his things that night, he opened his phone. A message from Lily lit up the screen. "Daddy, did you make new friends?" Jack smiled softly. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think I did." The narrator's voice returns as the screen fades to black. Never judge a man by his age, his scars, or his silence. Because sometimes, the quietest soldier in the room carries the loudest story. Then, as the emotional music rises, the narrator concludes with the call to action. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us, true strength isn't about muscle, it's about heart.